Warm Lagos sun shone through the large windows of the apartment Ola and Obi had worked hard to make their home. The sound of children's laughter filled the air as 6-year-old Chichi chased her little brother Kata around the living room. Ola smiled as she turned the stove, stirring a pot of jollof rice while keeping an eye on the kids. It was a happy home, full of love and teamwork, exactly how she had always wanted her marriage to be. Obi walked in, rolling up his sleeves. "How can I help, my love?" he asked, pecking Ola on the cheek. He knew she had been busy with the children all morning and never hesitated to assist. While many men in their culture still believed housework was a woman's duty, Obi saw things differently. "You can help set the table," Ola replied with a smile, and just like that, they moved in sync, their love reflected in the small, everyday moments. Their life in Lagos wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. They had built it with love, trust, and mutual respect. But Ola had no idea that this delicate balance was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. Mama Obi was coming to visit. The knock on the door was firm, almost impatient. Ola wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and hurried to answer. The moment she pulled the door open, she was met with the sharp, calculating eyes of Mama Obi. Dressed in a traditional Ankara wrapper with a matching head tie, the older woman stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her gaze sweeping over the living room as though inspecting for flaws. "So, this is how you're living," she said, clicking her tongue. "Obi, my son, come and carry my bags." Obi stepped forward quickly, offering a warm smile. "Mama, welcome. How was your journey?" He took her heavy bags and led her inside, but the warmth in his voice didn't seem to soften her expression. Ola forced a smile. "Welcome, Mama. I prepared your favorite vegetable soup." Mama Obi's lips pressed into a thin line. We will see if it is properly made," she muttered under her breath. Ola felt the first prick of unease. Something told her this visit was going to be far from peaceful. The evening started tense. As they sat for dinner, Mama Obi scrutinized everything. "This soup, it's not as thick as it should be," she remarked, pushing her plate away slightly. Ola swallowed her frustration. "I followed the recipe you like, Mama." Mama Obi shook her head. "Young wives of today, you don't know how to cook properly, yet you allow your husband to enter the kitchen." Her gaze flickered toward Obi, disappointment evident. Obi chuckled awkwardly, trying to diffuse the tension. "Mama, times have changed. Helping each other isn't a bad thing." Mama Obi scoffed. "In my time, a woman knew her place." Ola kept quiet, but inside she was already exhausted. It was only the first day, and she could already feel the storm brewing. The next morning, Ola woke up early, as she always did, to get the children ready for school. She moved around the kitchen, packing Chichi's and Kata's lunchboxes, while Obi helped Chichi tie her shoelaces. It was their daily routine, a small but important part of the teamwork that made their marriage strong. But as Ola turned to leave the kitchen, she almost bumped into Mama Obi, who stood by the doorway, arms folded across her chest. "You mean to tell me that my son is dressing his own child while you prance around the kitchen?" Mama Obi's voice was laced with disapproval. Ola blinked, startled. "Mama, Obi always helps in the mornings. It makes things easier for everyone." Mama Obi scoffed and shook her head. That is not how a proper wife behaves. In my time, a woman woke up before her husband, prepared his bath, set out his clothes, and took care of the children. Look at you, turning my son into a woman." Ola's chest tightened, but she forced herself to smile. "Mama, things are different now. Obi and I are partners. We both work hard, and we support each other." But Mama Obi wasn't listening. Instead, she clicked her tongue disapprovingly and walked away, muttering something under her breath. Ola felt a headache creeping in. She had barely survived the first day, and it was clear that Mama Obi had no intention of making things easy for her. That evening, Ola was preparing dinner when she noticed Mama Obi watching her from the kitchen entrance. The older woman stood with her arms crossed, her lips pursed as she observed every move Ola made. "You are slicing those vegetables too big," Mama Obi finally said. "A good wife knows how to cook properly. But you modern girls only know how to take shortcuts. Ola exhaled slowly, trying to remain calm. Mama, this is how Obi and the children like it. Besides, it's still the same food. Mama Obi let out a dry laugh. Same food? No wonder my son has lost weight. Back in the village, I made sure he ate real food, not this half-done city cooking. Ola's hand tightened around the knife. Mama, Obi is fine. He enjoys my cooking. Mama Obi shook her head. You young wives of today are too soft. Your husband helps you in the kitchen, yet you still complain. In my time, a woman would cook, serve, and clean before her husband even set foot in the kitchen. Ola bit her lip. This was the third time in one day that Mama Obi had tried to make her feel like she wasn't enough. The worst part? Obi had been silent through it all. As if on cue, Obi walked into the kitchen and smiled. Something smells good. Ola turned to him with a relieved smile, but before she could speak, Mama Obi clapped her hands together. See your life, Obi? You are praising a woman for cooking something she should do without being told. Obi chuckled nervously. Mama, it's not a crime to appreciate my wife. Mama Obi scoffed, shaking her head. You have been bewitched by love. A real man does not enter the kitchen. Ola expected Obi to say something, anything to defend her. But he only sighed and rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding both their gazes, and just like that, Ola knew she was on her own. Later that night, Ola sat in bed, staring at Obi as he undressed. She had spent the entire day biting her tongue, swallowing her frustration, while Mama Obi made her feel like an outsider in her own home. But the worst part was Obi's silence. She waited until he climbed into bed before speaking. Obi, why are you letting your mother talk to me like this? Obi sighed. Ola, you know how she is. She's old-fashioned. Just ignore her. Ola sat up, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Ignore her? Obi, she treats me like a maid in my own house. She keeps criticizing me and you just sit there, saying nothing. Obi rubbed his temples. Ola, she's my mother. What do you want me to do? Argue with her? Yes, Ola snapped. Or at least tell her to respect me. Obi shook his head. She won't be here forever. Let's just endure it for now. Ola stared at him in disbelief. Endure? Was that really his answer? She turned away from him, swallowing the lump in her throat. If Obi wouldn't defend her, then she would have to defend herself. Over the next few days, Mama Obi's presence became unbearable. She found fault with everything Ola did, how she folded the laundry, how she bathed the children, even how she greeted the neighbors. When Ola served breakfast one morning, Mama Obi barely looked at it before pushing the plate away. This tea is too watery. Ola clenched her jaw. Mama, I used the same milk and sugar as always. Mama Obi rolled her eyes. Maybe that's why it tastes bad. You don't even know how to make tea properly. Obi, who was reading the newspaper, remained silent. Later that afternoon, Ola tried to get some rest while the children napped, but Mama Obi knocked on the door loudly. A woman resting in the afternoon? Do you think this is a hotel? In my time, we were always working. Ola took a deep breath and forced a smile. Mama, I finished all my work. The children are asleep, and I just wanted to... Lazy wife, Mama Obi muttered as she walked away. Ola's hands shook with anger. She had tried to be respectful, but how much longer could she take this? Ola sat by the window that evening, staring out into the dimly lit street. The air was heavy, not with the Lagos humidity, but with the weight of frustration sitting in her chest. For the past 2 weeks, she had endured Mama Obi's cutting words, the constant disapproval, and the exhausting feeling of walking on eggshells in her own home. She had tried everything. She had smiled. She had kept quiet. She had even gone out of her way to show respect in every possible way. But nothing was ever good enough. Ola sighed and looked over at Obi, who sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. Obi, she said softly. He didn't even look up. Ola hesitated. She was tired of arguing, tired of being the one always bringing up the issue. But if she kept swallowing this pain, one day, It would choke her. I don't think I can take this anymore, she finally said. Obi sighed heavily and placed his phone down. Ola, what do you want me to do? Should I send my mother back to the village? Ola clenched her fists. Why did he always make it seem like she was asking for too much? No, Obi, I just need you to see how unfair this is. She treats me like I'm beneath her and you say nothing. You let her disrespect me, and it's breaking me. Obi rubbed his temples. Mama is old. She doesn't know any better. She knows better when she's talking to you, Ola snapped. She only treats me this way because she knows you won't stop her. Obi's face darkened. Ola, please, I don't want to fight. Ola let out a bitter laugh. Of course you don't. You never do. But guess what, Obi? Your silence is just as painful as her insults. She turned and walked away, her heart pounding with anger and sadness. That night, Ola lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. The room was quiet, except for Obi's steady breathing beside her. But even though they lay side by side, they felt worlds apart. For 6 years, she had built her home with love, brick by brick, moment by moment. But now, it felt like everything was being torn down, and the one person who should be protecting her was watching from the sidelines. She turned on her side. Obi, she whispered. He stirred slightly but didn't open his eyes. Are you awake? He groaned softly. Ola, please, can we talk in the morning? Ola felt something inside her snap. No, Obi, we're talking now. Obi sighed and sat up. The dim glow from the streetlights cast shadows on his face, making his exhaustion clear. What is it? Ola sat up too, wrapping her arms around herself. Do you love me? Obi frowned. What kind of question is that? Just answer me. Of course I love you, he said, running a hand through his hair. Why would you even ask that? Because love is not just about words, Obi, she said quietly. Love is about action. Love is about protection. And right now, I don't feel protected by you. Obi's face fell. Ola, you're making this bigger than it is. Ola laughed bitterly. No, Obi, you are making this smaller than it is. She took a shaky breath. You say you love me, but you let your mother disrespect me every single day. You let her make me feel like I am not good enough for you. And worst of all, you let me suffer alone. Obi looked away. It's not like that. It is like that, Ola interrupted. I need you to choose. Are you my husband, or are you just Mama's son? Obi's jaw tightened, and for a long moment he said nothing. And that silence told Ola everything she needed to know. The next morning, Mama Obi sat in the living room, her hands busy shelling groundnuts. She glanced up as Obi walked in, his expression tense. Obi, my son, she said sweetly, patting the space beside her. Come and sit with your mother. Obi sighed and sat down. Is everything okay? Mama Obi asked. You look troubled. Obi hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing, Mama. Just thinking. Mama Obi placed a hand on his arm. I hope you're not thinking about that wife of yours. Obi stiffened. Mama, please. My son, she said, her voice dripping with concern. I have been watching, and I can see that you are not happy. This woman has turned you into something you are not. Obi frowned. What do you mean? Mama Obi clicked her tongue. A man should not be running after children or washing plates like a houseboy. It is shameful. In my time, a woman knew her place, but this woman has changed you. Obi sighed heavily. Mama, things are different now. Ola and I share responsibilities. Mama Obi shook her head. She is lazy, my son. And worse, she is disrespectful. Obi's face darkened. She is not lazy. Mama Obi gave a dramatic sigh. A good wife does not challenge her husband. She does not argue. She does not raise her voice. Obi exhaled, rubbing his forehead. Mama, please, just let it go. Mama Obi studied his face for a moment, then leaned in. Tell me the truth, Obi. Is she truly making you happy? Obi opened his mouth, but no words came out. Mama Obi smiled triumphantly. 6-year-old Chi-Chi sat on the floor, playing with her dolls, but her little brows were furrowed. Something wasn't right. She turned to her younger brother, Kata, who was trying to fix a broken toy car. Kata, have you noticed that Mummy and Daddy don't smile as much anymore? Kata looked up, his round face scrunched in thought. Mummy looks sad, he said in his small voice. And Daddy looks tired. Chichi nodded. And Grandma is always making Mummy upset. The little boy blinked. Grandma doesn't like Mummy? Chichi hesitated, then shook her head. I don't think so. Kata frowned. But Mummy is the best. She makes the yummiest food, and she gives the best cuddles. Chichi nodded. I think we need to help Mummy. Kata clapped his hands together. Yes, but how? Chichi thought for a moment. Then her eyes lit up. We can make her smile again. Kata grinned. Yes, let's do it. The two children didn't know the full weight of what was happening between the adults, but they knew one thing. They wanted their Mummy to be happy again. And in their little hearts, they made a plan. Ola felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders as she stirred the pot of egusi soup on the stove. The aroma filled the kitchen, but instead of bringing comfort, it only reminded her of how tired she was. She had spent the entire day tending to the children, cleaning up after Mama Obi, and enduring her endless complaints. Every time she walked past Mama Obi in the living room, the older woman found something to comment on. You call that sweeping? Look at all the dust you left behind. The way you tied Kata's wrapper, it's too loose. You don't even know how to dress a child properly. I see your husband is still washing plates. Does he even see you as a real wife? It was like being cut by 1,000 tiny blades. Obi, as usual, said nothing. Ola gritted her teeth as she turned off the stove. She heard the children's laughter from the bedroom, and for a moment, she closed her eyes, willing herself to hold on for their sake. But as she carried the steaming pot to the dining table, Mama Obi's voice rang out again. Ah, you made the soup too thick. This is why I say young wives today don't know how to cook properly. Ola froze. Her hands trembled as she set the pot down. She turned slowly, looking at Mama Obi, who sat in her usual corner with an air of superiority, arms folded across her chest. Obi sat nearby, his eyes focused on his phone. He had heard the comment, but as always, he ignored it. Something inside Ola snapped. She had been patient. She had been quiet. She had swallowed her pride and her pain, hoping that if she endured just a little longer, things would get better. But not anymore. With slow, measured steps, she walked to the chair across from Mama Obi and sat down. Her heart pounded, but her voice was calm. Mama, I have tried, she said, her words steady but filled with suppressed emotion. I have tried to be a good wife to Obi. I have tried to be a good mother to my children. I have tried to respect you, even when you refuse to respect me. Mama Obi's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected Ola to speak. I have cooked, I have cleaned, I have done everything I can to make this home peaceful, Ola continued, her voice shaking slightly. But nothing I do is ever enough for you. Obi finally looked up from his phone, his expression shifting to concern. Ola, let's not do this now, he started, but she cut him off. No, Obi, we will do this now, because I am tired. Ola's voice rose, and for the first time the children stopped playing in the bedroom. You treat me like I am a stranger in my own home, she continued, turning back to Mama Obi. You insult me, you belittle me, and worst of all, you act like I am not worthy of your son. Mama Obi's lips parted as if to protest, but Ola wasn't finished. I have kept quiet for too long, but today I will speak. Ola's hands trembled as she balled them into fists. You have made me feel like a failure, like I am not good enough to be part of this family. But let me tell you something, Mama. I am good enough, and I refuse to let you break me. Silence filled the room. For the first time since her arrival, Mama Obi looked shaken. Obi swallowed hard. Ola, Ola turned to him, her eyes filled with hurt. And you, Obi, you stood by and watched. You let your mother treat me this way, and you said nothing. Obi looked down, ashamed. Mama Obi shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I was only trying to help. Help. Ola let out a bitter laugh. This is not help, Mama. This is control. You want me to serve in silence, just like you did, but I will not live in silence. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for the first time, Mama Obi had nothing to say. The night passed in tense silence. Ola barely touched her food. Obi, too, looked uncomfortable, as though he was finally realizing how deeply the situation had affected his wife. Mama Obi, however, remained stiff, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't say a word to Ola for the rest of the evening, which, strangely, was more unsettling than the insults. The children noticed the tension. Chichi clung to her mother's side, sensing her sadness, while Kata asked in his small voice, "Mummy, are you okay?" Ola forced a smile and hugged him tightly. "Yes, my love. Mummy is just tired." But inside, she was exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually. As she lay in bed later that night, she heard Obi sigh beside her. "You really hurt Mama today," he said softly. Ola turned to face him, her eyes burning with frustration. "And what about me, Obi? Have you ever thought about how much she has hurt me?" Obi exhaled. "I know, Ola. I know I should have done more, but she's my mother." "And I'm your wife," Ola whispered fiercely. "I'm the one who is building a future with you. I am the mother of your children. So why does she get to come into our home and treat me like I am nothing?" Obi looked away, guilt flickering across his face. Ola sighed, softer this time. "Obi, I love you, I always have. But I will not continue living like this. If something doesn't change, I don't know how much longer I can stay in this house." Obi's eyes widened. "Ola! I mean it." She turned away from him, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, Obi realized that if he didn't act soon, he might lose his wife forever, and that thought scared him more than anything else. The next morning, Obi woke up with a heavy heart. He watched as Ola moved through the house with quiet determination, getting the children ready, serving breakfast, cleaning the table. She looked the same, but something had changed. There was a coldness in her eyes, a distance in the way she spoke, and it hit him like a slap to the face. Mama Obi sat at the dining table, still silent. But for once, Obi didn't feel the need to protect her. Instead, he looked at his wife, the woman who had stood by him, loved him, given him children, and endured so much for him. He needed to make this right. He cleared his throat. "Mama, we need to talk." Mama Obi looked up, surprised. "About what?" Obi met her gaze firmly. "About how you have been treating my wife." For the first time in a long time, his mother looked truly afraid. Obi's words hung in the air like an unexpected thunderclap. Mama Obi blinked, clearly startled. She had never imagined that her son, the boy she had raised, the one who had always listened to her without question, would ever challenge her like this. What did you just say?" she asked, her voice sharp. Obi inhaled deeply and squared his shoulders. "I said we need to talk about how you've been treating Ola." Mama Obi let out a dry laugh and shook her head. "Ainen, wonders shall never end. So now, your wife has turned you against your own mother?" Ola, who had been clearing the dishes silently, froze. She wanted to speak, but she knew this was a moment Obi had to handle. Obi frowned. "Mama, nobody has turned me against you. I love you, but I also love my wife, and I will not stand by and watch you treat her like she doesn't belong in this family." Mama Obi scoffed. "Ah, I see now. She has used juju on you, because my son that I raised would never talk to me like this." Obi shook his head. "Mama, stop this. This is not about juju. This is about respect." Mama Obi's eyes darkened. "Respect?" she repeated, as if the word tasted bitter on her tongue. "You mean I, a woman who suffered to bring you into this world, should now bow to your wife?" "No, Mama," Obi said, his voice firm. "I'm saying that you should treat her like a human being." Ola felt a lump in her throat. For the first time since his mother's arrival, Obi was defending her. But Mama Obi wasn't done. "So because she cried to you last night, you now think I'm the bad person?" "Ah, Obi, you disappoint me." Obi sighed. "Mama, please, just listen to yourself. From the moment you arrived, you have done nothing but insult her, criticize her, and make her feel like she's not good enough. And I allowed it because I was afraid of upsetting you. But that ends today." Mama Obi's mouth opened, then closed. She had expected Obi to side with her as he always did, but this was different. This time, he was choosing his wife. Ola finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "Mama, I never wanted to come between you and your son. I have always respected you because you are his mother, but you don't have to break me just to prove your place in his life." Mama Obi's face hardened. "You modern girls think you know everything. In my time, a woman endured. A woman served in silence." Ola held her gaze. "Maybe that's why so many women in your time were unhappy." A flicker of something pain? Realization? Crossed Mama Obi's face, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Obi's voice was softer this time. "Mama, please. If you love me, respect my wife. Because if you keep treating her this way, you will push her away. And if she leaves Mama, I will follow her." Mama Obi's head snapped up. "What did you say?" Obi swallowed. "I said if she goes, I go with her." The room fell into shocked silence. Ola's heart pounded. Had Obi just said what she thought he had? Mama Obi looked like she had been slapped. She turned to Ola with disbelief. You have stolen my son from me." "No, Mama," Ola said gently. "He's just being the man you raised him to be." Mama Obi opened her mouth as if to argue, but no words came. For the first time in her life, she had no response. That evening, Mama Obi sat on the veranda, staring into the dark Lagos sky. The stars twinkled above, but her mind was far away, lost in the past. She remembered her own marriage many years ago. Her husband had been a strong, proud man, a man of tradition who believed that a woman's place was in the kitchen, that a wife existed only to serve. She had been no different from Ola, once young, hopeful, full of dreams. But life had broken her. She had learned quickly that a woman who spoke up was a woman who suffered. She had learned to swallow her words, to accept the pain, to pretend she was happy even when she wasn't. And now, looking at Ola, she saw a version of herself that she had buried long ago. A version that refused to be silenced. A version that still believed love should not come with suffering. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. She was too proud to cry, but deep inside, for the first time, she wondered if she had been wrong all along. The next morning, Ola woke up feeling lighter. Something had shifted. Mama Obi wasn't as cold as before. She didn't speak much, but she also didn't insult her. It was a small change, but it was there. As she prepared breakfast, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Mama Obi standing in the doorway. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Mama Obi cleared her throat. "Do you need help?" Ola blinked in surprise. "Help?" Mama Obi nodded stiffly. "With the cooking." Ola hesitated, then handed her a knife. "You can chop vegetables." Mama Obi sat down and started chopping, silently, but without complaint. It was the first step. And Ola knew that sometimes change began with the smallest gestures. The change was slow, but it was happening. Mama Obi started spending more time with the children, playing with Chichi and Kata, instead of just giving orders. She even praised Ola's food once, though it was in a grudging tone. Obi noticed too. One evening he pulled Ola aside and whispered, "She's trying." Ola exhaled. "I know. It wasn't perfect." Mama Obi still had her moments, still made comments sometimes that stung. But Ola was no longer afraid to speak up, and that made all the difference. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Mama Obi finally looked at Ola and said, "I was hard on you. Too hard." Ola froze. Had she just heard that correctly? Mama Obi sighed. "I only wanted my son to be happy. I thought I was protecting him." Ola met her gaze. "Mama, I never wanted to take Obi away from you. I just wanted to be his wife, not his servant." Mama Obi swallowed. Then, after a long moment, she nodded. "I see that now." It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. And sometimes, healing takes time. Ola sat outside in the compound, watching Chichi and Kata play under the fading evening sun. The harmattan breeze blew softly, carrying with it the scent of roasted corn from a nearby street vendor. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. Things had changed. Mama Obi wasn't suddenly warm and affectionate, but she had softened. She still held on to some of her traditional beliefs, but the sharp edge of resentment and disapproval had dulled. The tension that once wrapped around the house like a suffocating rope was beginning to loosen. Obi stepped out onto the veranda, watching her. "You look more relaxed," he observed. Ola sighed, pulling her wrapper tighter around her waist. "It's been a long time since I felt this way." Obi sat beside her, quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "I should have done better," he admitted. Ola looked at him, surprised. Obi swallowed, his gaze fixed on the children. "I let you suffer alone, Ola. I thought I was keeping the peace, but really, I was just avoiding the truth." Ola felt her heart tighten. This was the Obi she had been waiting for, the husband she had built a life with. She placed her hand on his. "Thank you for saying that." Obi turned to face her fully. "I love you, Ola, and from now on, I promise, I will always stand by you." Ola searched his eyes, looking for doubt, but there was none. She squeezed his hand, nodding. "That's all I ever wanted." From inside, Mama Obi watched them quietly. She didn't say anything, but deep inside, she knew that things had changed forever. The next morning, as Ola prepared breakfast, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, expecting to see Obi. But it was Mama Obi. The older woman stood with her arms crossed, shifting uncomfortably, as if she was debating whether to speak. Ola wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and waited. Finally, Mama Obi cleared her throat. "I have something to say," she began slowly. Ola blinked, surprised. "I'm listening, Mama." Mama Obi exhaled, her gaze fixed on the pot of boiling yam on the stove. "I was wrong." Ola's breath hitched. Mama Obi swallowed, still not meeting her eyes. "I thought I was protecting Obi. I thought I was teaching you how to be a proper wife. But I see now that I was only pushing you away." Ola stood frozen. She had never expected this. Mama Obi finally looked at her. "I will not pretend that I understand this new way of marriage, but I can see that Obi is happy, and that means I should have accepted you sooner." Ola felt tears prick her eyes. Mama Obi inhaled sharply. "I don't expect you to forgive me quickly, but I wanted to say I am sorry." Ola stared at her mother-in-law, the woman who had once made her life a living nightmare, finally admitting her wrongs. Her throat tightened. She could have stayed angry. She could have lashed out and reminded Mama Obi of all the pain she had caused. But instead, she chose grace. Ola stepped forward and placed her hand over Mama Obi's. "I forgive you," she whispered. Mama Obi's eyes softened, and for the first time the wall between them began to crumble. Obi had always thought of himself as a good husband, but looking back, he realized he had been a coward. For years, he had believed that keeping quiet was the same as keeping the peace. But now, as he sat watching his wife and mother speak in the kitchen, without anger, without pain, he knew that real peace was built on honesty, understanding, and action. That evening, as they sat together in their bedroom, Obi took Ola's hand. "I should have spoken up sooner," he admitted. "I should have protected you." Ola looked at him, her expression unreadable. "But I promise," Obi continued, squeezing her hand, "I will never let you feel alone again." Ola searched his face and then nodded slowly. "I believe you." For the first time in weeks, she smiled. And Obi knew that he had almost lost the most important thing in his life. He silently vowed to never make that mistake again. Ola sat outside under the mango tree, watching the sun slowly dip beneath the horizon. The sky was a beautiful mix of orange, pink, and purple, a perfect end to what had been a long but meaningful journey. She had changed. The woman who had once swallowed her pain in silence was no longer here. In her place stood a woman who had fought for her happiness, who had spoken up for her worth, and who had made it clear that love was not suffering in silence. She thought back to all the nights she had laid in bed, questioning herself, wondering if she was overreacting, if she was just being too modern, as Mama Obi had once put it. But she now knew that demanding respect was not a crime. She glanced at the children, playing happily in the sand, their laughter filling the air. For them, she had fought. For them, she had stood her ground. And now, because of her strength, they were growing up in a home that was no longer heavy with tension and unspoken pain. The wind blew gently against her skin, and she let out a soft sigh. She had once believed that being a good wife meant enduring everything without complaint. But now, she knew the truth. Being a good wife meant knowing when to fight for yourself. Because love, true love, was never about suffering in silence, and she would never be silent again. The first sign of change came in small moments. It was in the way Mama Obi stopped finding fault in everything Ola did. It was in the way she started listening instead of criticizing. It was in the way she sat with Chichi and Kata, telling them old village stories, her ancestor face softening as the children giggled and clapped in excitement. Ola noticed everything. She noticed the way Mama Obi hesitated before making a negative comment, as if catching herself before she spoke. She noticed the way the older woman watched Obi and Ola together, observing how they moved as a team, how Obi's love for his wife was not a sign of weakness, but a testament of true partnership. One evening, Mama Obi did something completely unexpected. As Ola served food at the dining table, Mama Obi reached for a spoon and served Ola first. Everyone froze. Obi raised an eyebrow in surprise. Even Chichi and Kata looked at each other, wondering if they had imagined it. Ola looked up at her mother-in-law. Mama Obi met her gaze for a moment, then quickly looked away, pretending as if nothing had happened. Ola smiled softly. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Change didn't happen overnight. It took time, patience, and willingness to grow, and for the first time, Ola knew that Mama Obi was truly trying. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still small disagreements, like when Mama Obi complained that Lagos tap water would never taste as sweet as village water, or when she muttered under her breath that Obi still helped too much in the kitchen. But the difference was that those moments no longer held bitterness. There was laughter at the dining table again. There was peace in the home. There was understanding between a mother-in-law and her son's wife, two women who had once been on opposite sides, but had finally learned to meet in the middle. One Sunday afternoon, as Ola braided Chichi's hair, Mama Obi came to sit beside her. "Your fingers are fast," Mama Obi observed, watching as Ola's hands moved skillfully through the little girl's thick hair. Ola smiled. "I've had years of practice." Mama Obi hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "In my time, I did not have the chance to speak up like you did," she admitted. Ola paused, looking at her mother-in-law. "I was taught that a woman's strength was in her silence," Mama Obi continued. "But now, I see that a woman's strength can also be in her voice." Ola's chest tightened with emotion. It had taken so long, so many painful moments to reach this point. But now, Mama Obi finally understood. "Thank you, Mama," Ola whispered, her eyes shining. Mama Obi patted her knee lightly before standing up, muttering something about checking the stew on the fire. Ola smiled to herself. This was true peace. Not a forced silence, not an uneasy truce, but real, genuine peace. Mama Obi eventually returned to the village, but this time, it was a departure filled with warmth, not tension. She hugged Chichi and Kata tightly, pressing small naira notes into their hands with a playful wink. When she turned to Ola, there was a brief moment of hesitation. Then, she opened her arms. Ola stepped forward and hugged her mother-in-law, feeling something genuine and unspoken pass between them. "I will come back soon," Mama Obi said gruffly, "and maybe next time, you can teach me how to make your egusi soup." Ola laughed softly, surprised. "I would love that, Mama." As they stood by the roadside, watching the bus drive away, Obi slipped an arm around Ola's shoulders. "She's changed," Ola murmured. Obi smiled. "And so have we." As they walked back into their home, hand in hand, Ola knew one thing for certain. The dark days were over. The pain, the unspoken words, the resentmental of it was in the past. Her children would grow up in a home filled with love, not tension. She had fought for her happiness, and she had won. And the future? It looked bright. The end.